Shalom, the Father's blessings to you. We are going to continue with our study, and we're in the book of Proverbs, but our study has a theme, and the theme has to do with rebuilding in 2022. In my meditation at the beginning of the year, the Most High gave this idea, and we were instructed to direct our study to this theme. The whole theme is repair the breach, go back and build. So the going back and building is what we have been looking at as we've studied the scriptures and continue to study the scripture. Part of that going back and building begins with the individual. So it's as we know from our previous studies in previous weeks, we were looking at Nehemiah and Ezra and a little bit of Esther as well. And actually, we're going to look at Esther again in the very near future, but as it relates to some of the things that are happening, the negative things that have been happening in the culture and in the nation regarding this racial animus that's going on. But we're not going to talk about that this evening. We're going to be looking at a continuation of the theme that we've been looking at, which is rebuilding in 2022. But what we are actually rebuilding is not a physical structure. It begins with the understanding that the Most High's people are now the temple of the Most High. And so as we go back and rebuild the temple that has been destroyed, make no mistake about that, the temple that has been destroyed has to be rebuilt. But the rebuilding of that temple is a spiritual rebuilding, and the building blocks of the temple are the living stones, and the living stones are the Most High's people. So we're really looking at how do we fashion ourselves as individuals as well as families and communities and a nation to actualize the rebuilding process of the temple of the Most High, so and the city of the Most High and the nation of the Most High. So that's what we've been studying. We as I mentioned earlier, we looked at Ezra and Nehemiah. We also looked at in the process of rebuilding, reestablishing the Moedim, the feast days that the nation was given at the outset, and also how the nation absolutely needs leaders. Throughout the history of Israel, the Most High has worked with his people through human beings, and those human beings are people that he put in positions of leadership. So we're looking at this from the perspective of leadership, which gets us to Proverbs, because what the Proverbs are, they're the teachings of King Solomon to his sons, and those teachings were given to him by King David. So the leadership of the nation was to lead with these understandings, and that's how we've gotten involved with the looking at Proverbs. So we're going to be looking at Proverbs chapters 7 and 8 for this particular lesson, and we're going to read them as usual, and then just spend a little bit of time on a couple of slides just in review of what we read. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. And let me bring up the scriptures first. So we'll start with Proverbs chapter 7. Okay. It says, there is a title, Warning About the Adulteress. we'll go into that a little bit further. But Proverbs chapter 7 is talking about that. Proverbs chapter 8, that we're also going to look at and read, is talking about the personification of wisdom, and wisdom being seen as the woman. So just to remind ourselves, there are parallel paths that we find in Scripture from Genesis to Revelation. One is the path of obedience, and one is the path of disobedience. They're personified by the wisdom, which is representative of a woman, and the harlot, which is also representative of a woman, but both have to do with obedience and disobedience. Even in the last book, Israel is described as a woman, and in the last book in Revelation, when the New Jerusalem comes down out of heaven, it says, I saw the New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven as a bride adorned for her husband. So we know that theme is found all the way into Revelation, as well as the theme of the spirit of disobedience, which is in the form of the serpent, which and the harlot that is riding the beast in Revelation. So both of those are going in parallel motion, and we see that happening in the Proverbs as well. So we're going to be looking at that phenomenon in Proverbs chapter 7 and Proverbs chapter 8. Proverbs 7 verse 1. My son, keep my words and treasure my commandments within you. Keep my commandments and live. Guard my teachings as the apple of your eye. Tie them to your fingers. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Say to wisdom, you are my sister, and call understanding your kinsman, that they may keep you from the adulteress, from the stranger with seductive words. For at the at the window of my house, I looked through the lattice, or the lattice. I saw among the simple, I noticed among the youths, a young man lacking judgment, crossing the street near her corner, strolling down the road to her house at twilight as the day was fading into the dark of the night. Then a woman came out to meet him with the attire of a harlot and cunning of heart. She is loud and defiant. Her feet do not remain at home. Now in the street, now in the squares, she lurks at every corner. She seizes him and kisses him. She brazenly says to him, I have made my peace offerings today. I have paid my vows, so I came out to meet you. I sought you and I have found you. I have decked my bed with coverings, with colored linen from Egypt. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, with aloes, and with cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love till morning. Let us delight in loving caresses. For my husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey. He took with him a bag of money and will not return till the moon is full. With her great persuasion, she entices him. With her flattering lips, she lures him. He follows her on impulse, like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer bounding into a trap, until an arrow pierces his liver, like a bird darting into a snare, not knowing it will cost him his life. Now, my sons, listen to me and attend to the words of my mouth. Do not let your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths, for she has brought many down to death. Her slain are many in number. Her house is the road to Sheol, or hell, descending to the chambers of death. That was Proverbs chapter 7, and that's talking primarily about the harlot. And now we'll go into Proverbs chapter 8 and read that chapter, the excellence of wisdom. Does not wisdom call out and understanding raise her voice? On the heights overlooking the road at the crossroads, she takes her stand. Beside the gates to the city, at the entrances, she cries out. To you, O men, I call out, and my cry is to the sons of men. O simple ones, learn to be shrewd. O fools, gain understanding. Listen, for I speak of noble things, and the opening of my lips will reveal right. For my mouth will speak the truth, and wickedness is detestable to my lips. All the words of my mouth are righteous, none are crooked or perverse. They are all plain to the discerning, and upright to those who find knowledge. Receive my instruction instead of silver, and knowledge rather than pure gold. For wisdom is more precious than rubies, and nothing you desire compares with her. I, wisdom, dwell together with prudence, and I find knowledge and discretion. To fear Yahuwah is to hate evil. I hate arrogant pride, evil conduct, and perverse speech. Counsel and sound judgment are mine. I have insight and strength. By me, kings reign, and rulers enact just laws. By me, princes rule, and all nobles who govern justly. I love those who love me, and those who seek me early shall find me. With me are riches and honor, enduring wealth and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, pure gold, and my harvest surpasses choice silver. I walk in the way of righteousness, along the paths of justice, bestowing wealth on those who love me and making their treasuries full. Yahuwah created me as his first course, before his works of old. From everlasting I was established, from the beginning, before the earth began. When there were no watery depths, I was brought forth. When no springs were overflowing with water, before the mountains were settled, before the hills, I was brought forth. Before he made the land or fields or any of the dust of the earth, I was there. When he established the heavens, when he inscribed a circle on the face of the deep, when he established the clouds above, when the fountains of the deep gushed forth, when he set a boundary for the sea so that the waters would not surpass his command, when he marked out the foundations of the earth, there I was, a skilled craftsman at his side, and his delight day by day, rejoicing always in his presence. I was rejoicing in his whole world, delighting together in the sons of men. Now, therefore, my sons, listen to me, for blessed are those who keep my ways. Listen to instruction and be wise. Do not ignore it. Blessed is the man who listens to me, watching daily at my doors, waiting at the post of my doorway. For whoever finds me finds life and obtains the favor of Yahuwah. But he who fails to find me harms himself. All who hate me love death. That's Proverbs chapter 7 and Proverbs chapter 8. There's a lot in there, but what we wanted to show is the comparison between the harlot and wisdom. Both are described as feminine. Okay. So let's just for a couple of minutes go back a little bit to Proverbs chapter 7, and then we'll look at a chart comparing the two. So again, why is this proverb here? It's because the person who is on the receiving end of this proverb is going to lead other people. And there are two ways of leading. One way is the way of righteousness, and the other way is the way of foolishness. One way is the way of wisdom, the other way is the way of destruction. So, in order for wisdom to prevail, the son hearing these things from the father, because that's how the culture is passed down from heaven to the people of the Most High. It comes from heaven. He gives it to his prophets and his priest, and they give it to their families, and then they give it to the rest of the nation, so that you have an entire nation of people with the same mind. What kind of mind is that? It's the mind of Yahuwah. It's the mind of the Most High. That mind is what we call scripture. The scriptures that we read reflect the mind of the Most High. It is the mind of the Most High that acculturates us. In other words, it gives us our way of living. There is another way of living, the way of the world, and that's represented by the adulteress, by the harlot. So again, he says, my son, keep my words, treasure my commandments within you, keep my commandments and live. The commandments are what brings life, that which brings life. And that which brings life has to be taught. So we are to guard his teachings as the apple of our eye. Remember, we did a teaching on the apple of the eye. That the apple of the eye is the little reflection of yourself that you see when you look into the pupil of another person, of another human being. Okay, so when the Most High calls us the apple of his eye, he's looking into us and is seeing a reflection of himself. Well, that's what his teachings are. So that's why the scriptures are saying, guard my teachings as the apple of your eye, so that when we look into the word, we should be able to see a reflection of ourselves. All right. So that's what the son is being told. That's what the leader is being told to give to his children. All right. Then again, see this whole theme is repetitive. Tie them to your fingers. Write them on the tablet of your heart. And then it says, say to wisdom, you are my sister. That's the feminine part. Wisdom is feminine. It's a personification of that which is biblically feminine. And so that's what wisdom is. And it says, call understanding your kinsman. So just like wisdom is the sister, understanding the wisdom is also your relative. And that's what he's saying. And so when we say to wisdom, you are my sister, and we call understanding our kinsman, then we're able to be kept from the adulteress that's out here with us. And again, the word adulteress and stranger the words adulteress and stranger are together throughout the Proverbs, because an adulteress is a strange woman. And again, when you look up that word, I keep saying again, because we've gone over this, if you hadn't noticed, Proverbs is repetitive. It keeps going in and out of itself with the same ideas, just with different, slightly different ways of presenting those ideas. So this idea is that when we have wisdom which is a woman, that keeps us from the other woman, which is an adulteress. Okay, and that adulteress, along with the adultery, comes the worship of another god, and that's what makes that that's what brings the two together, stranger and adulteress. Those who were outside of the commonwealth of Israel were called strangers, and That's why they were told, don't marry the people who are outside of your people, because if you do, their gods are going to become your gods. And he was really talking to the men, especially the men in leadership, because they were the ones that were to present the blessing of the Most High to their families and to those who they were leading. So if they made families based on strange women or adulteresses, then the the way of life, which included an object of worship, which is what a god is, it included an object of worship, then that would cause them to worship the same god, false god, if you will, that the person that they have joined themselves to was worshiping. And that was an abomination to the Most High, because his life cannot be replicated that way. You have to have the replication of life with people of like culture. All right. I have to keep saying the word culture. This is not talking about skin color. This is talking about culture. Just as an aside, all the people in scripture were people of color. All right. I'll say it again. All the people in scripture were people of color. So I understand what we've been taught, but if you look at where all of these things happened, those were people of color, all of them. All right, so let's keep going. Again, it says, "For at the window of my house," verse 6, "I looked through the lattice, I saw among the simple." Now, remember when I was talking about how men have two places that they can think from, okay, and usually they pick the wrong one time and time again. Maybe I didn't articulate that enough, but this is sort of talking about that. So when it talks about I saw among the simple, the reason why it's called, why the word simple is being used, is because he's talking about, I saw among the young folk, okay, in our culture, the young adults thinking with the wrong brain, okay. And so he says, I saw among the young adults a young man lacking judgment, crossing the street near her corner, strolling down the road to her house. This young man is on the way to the house of the harlot. He knows where the harlot lives, okay? So he may be fooling himself into thinking, well, I'm just walking down the street minding my own business. But that other brain of his is directing him into this house or to this house. And it's usually happening at twilight and at night. That's usually when these things jump off. So it says, crossing the street near her corner, strolling down the road to her house at twilight, as the day was fading into the dark of night. When that happens, then the woman comes out to meet him. She has a house, okay? She comes out to meet him to make sure that she gets him to come to where she is. And this verse 10, is a very telling verse. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we're only looking at this for the spiritual lesson from it. But in the way that our people operate, we operate tactily, okay? And what I mean by that, we operate a lot in the realm of what I can see, touch, taste, and feel, okay, in the five senses. And so most of our culture is related in some way to those five senses. All right. So when it says, verse 10, with the attire of a harlot, The woman that's the harlot is dressed in a certain way. Okay. She's dressed in a way that will be appealing to one of the five senses or several of the five senses of the simple youth who is looking for this experience. Now, this particular youth in Proverbs chapter 7 is a leader, is the king's son. All right. So we have to keep reminding ourselves who is on the receiving end of this information. Now, that's not to say that if you're not the king, this doesn't apply to you. This is to say that the leadership is going through the same thing that everybody else is going through. So the young men thinking with the wrong brain are being stimulated by the attire of the harlot. A harlot is selling something. Okay. The other word for harlot is prostitute. So that's the woman that comes out to meet him. She's a prostitute. Prostitutes sell things. So if you're in marketing, let's say you're in marketing and you're wanting to sell a bunch of fruit. Okay. Well, what you do in order for people to buy it is, first of all, you put it out where they can see it. And then you display it in such a way that it is enticing the person through their visual perspective to want to pick it up. And then once they pick it up, they can then eat it and see how good it tastes. Okay. Well, the harlot is selling something too. So what she is doing is the same thing that any person in marketing will do. She is making sure that you see her product. So what is her product? Her product is her body. So she's going to wear things that will accentuate her body. Now, even as I say this, I know that people in 2022 are thinking about scantily dressed women. That was not necessarily the case here. Okay. Women used to wear veils. Okay. And they used to be covered as a part of their daily dress. So in some cases, all you could see is the eyes of the woman, but that is also what was happening here. Even if that was the case, what she did in order to attract him to her eyes was she put makeup on her eyes. She accentuated her eyes. And that is what would draw the young man. So it wouldn't have to be necessarily clothes that are showing a whole lot of skin. What it has to do with is advertising what you stand for. And that's what the harlot is doing. The harlot stands for encouraging the pleasures of the flesh that the young man already has. Okay. Don't forget, he was walking down the street looking for her house, right? Okay. Now, not only that, it says she is loud and defiant. These are characteristics of the prostitute. These are the characteristics of the harlot as well. And then it says her feet do not remain at home. See, if she stayed home, she wouldn't run into this guy. So although he may be looking necessarily for her, he's not just going to go up to her door and say, "What's up? Let me in." So she comes out to him. So again, it says she came out to meet him with the attire of a harlot and cunning of heart, being loud and defiant. Her feet do not remain at home. And now, so she's out in the street, and it says she lurks at every corner. She seizes him, and then it starts, okay, kisses him, brazenly says to him, I want your body. Okay, so this whole thing about I have made my peace offerings today, I have paid my vows. Um, I could go into that too, but I'll just gloss over that part. In essence, what she's saying is, I know how to be good, okay, but I'm looking for you. So because I got a bed that I want you in. So that's where she's headed with all of that. And she talks about, so she starts talking about her bed. In my bed, it looks nice. It's covered with linen. It smells nice. I've got perfume on and in the bed with aloes and cinnamon. Let's use all of that. And verse 18 says, come, let us take our fill of love till morning. Let us delight in loving caresses. Then she says in verse 19, for my husband is not at home. This is what makes her the harlot. This is what makes her the adulteress. She's doing all these things and she's got a man, but her man is not there. And so now she has gone after this young boy. This is written in Proverbs, but if you remember back in Genesis, this is what happened with Joseph in Potiphar's house. Potiphar went off on a long journey, and Potiphar's wife tried to seduce Joseph. Basically, she could have said these, well, she probably did, said these exact same things. The difference was Joseph was operating under wisdom. He had a girlfriend under wisdom, and he kept saying no, even to the point of him running away. But this young man is hooked, and this young man in Proverbs chapter 7. So all of that happened, though, is it says in verse 21, with her great persuasion, she entices him. See, all of this is not talking about a literal female, although that may be the case in some cases. It's talking about a spirit. This spirit has been on the planet since we've been on the planet. The spirit of harlotry, okay, which is based on pleasures that are inordinate when you carry them out. So what does the man do? The young man do? He follows her on impulse, thinking with the wrong brain, okay? And so following his impulse, it says, like an ox going to slaughter. So he follows this woman into the house thinking that he is going to get service, and he will, but the end result is his death, just like the ox going to a slaughter or a deer that's trapped. Okay. So that's why the father is telling the son, not only sons, plural, listen to me and attend to the words of my mouth. Don't let your heart turn aside to her ways. In other words, there's something you can do about that. Well, how do we know that it's possible? Joseph did it. All right. So we can either do what Joseph did, or we can do what David did. The man who's teaching these things to his son is saying, in essence, don't do what I did, because once you go down that path leads to death. And so that's what Proverbs chapter 7 is talking about. So that's one line. Then the other parallel line is the line of wisdom, which is the personification. Again, a woman, wisdom is being personified as a woman. Well, what kind of woman is wisdom? She's the one who calls out and cries out to the sons of men, and she says the same thing, oh, simple ones. But rather than simple ones follow me, she says, into sin, she says, verse 5, oh, simple ones, learn to be shrewd. Oh, fools, gain understanding. Listen, for I speak of noble things, and the opening of my lips is not for yours to to misuse, the opening of my lips will reveal the right things. So what's coming out of my mouth, or the sayings that come out of my mouth, will give you the right path to take. Okay. Why? Verse 7, because my mouth is going to speak the truth. The simple young man, rather than listening to his right brain, he's listening to his wrong brain. Wisdom is saying, no, you have a brain that was given to you by the Most High. Reason with that one. Okay. And then the other one will be in subjection. So listen to how you do that by listening to me. And so she says, wickedness is detestable to my lips. So whatever comes out of my lips is not going to be wicked. It's going to be righteous. So if you do what I say to do, then you will also be righteous, because that's what the words that I'm giving you are. They're not crooked. They're not perverse. They're plain. Joseph's response to Potiphar's wife was a plain response. No, I'm not doing that. That was his response. Okay. Very plain, very simple. And that's what wisdom is saying to the young men. That's how you need to be. Okay. So receive my instruction instead of silver, knowledge rather than pure gold, for wisdom is more precious than rubies, and nothing you desire compares with wisdom, including the harlot, including the sexual escapades that the harlot will lead you on, including all the drama that comes from those sexual escapades, which includes baby mama drama. So all of those things that come from the person who is drawing you to that which does not belong to you, if you follow my simple teachings, you avoid all of that. Okay. So it says in verse 12, I, wisdom, dwell together with prudence, and I find knowledge and discretion. And then he's told by wisdom to fear Yahuwah is to hate evil. That's one of the ways that you stay on the right path. You hate going on the wrong path. Okay. So wisdom hates arrogant pride. Wisdom hates evil conduct. Wisdom hates perverse speech. And all three of those are exemplified. No, not it. All three of those are manifested in the harlot, in the adulteress. It's the adulteress that has evil pride. It's the adulteress that has evil conduct. It's the adulteress that has perverse speech. She got a bad mouth. Okay. Wisdom is not like that. And so if you're teaching young people, young men or young women, this verse is the way to give them the alternative to what's out here that they see every day and they hear every day and even they feel every day. Okay. So wisdom says kings reign by me. Okay. And rulers enact just laws. Now, I want you to think about, since we're in this time of destruction when it comes to this country, I want you to think about all of the unjust laws that are on the book, or all of the laws that are on the book that only target one people group and leave another people group to be able to do outside and operate outside of those laws. So kings don't do that. Kings who reign by wisdom don't do that. Leaders who reign by wisdom don't do that. They enact just laws that are applicable and carried out regardless of who you are as an individual or what people group you come from. Well, we don't live in a country like that. We live in a country that makes rules so that they can oppress another group of people. But because they're laws, they feel justified in doing it. So Princes rule by wisdom. They don't rule by that. Okay. And then verse 17 says, I love those who love me. Wisdom promotes love. The harlot promotes lust, inordinate desire. Okay. And with wisdom comes riches and honor, enduring wealth and righteousness. The fruit of wisdom is better than gold. It's better than choice silver. Okay. It is actually a path of righteousness. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you're with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. The Lord is my shepherd. That's what I'm obviously I started at the end of that 23rd Psalm. But the idea is that the person is walking a path with the Most High, with the Lord, if you will. And that path that they're walking is the path of righteousness. Now, that path is going to go through the valley of the shadow of death, but it doesn't stay in the valley of the shadow of death. Wisdom will take you through the valley of the shadow of death. The harlot will take you into the valley of the shadow of death, and you will remain there. So that's the difference. Now, verses 22 through 20, well, actually through 31 is another account of Genesis. Okay, it's another account of creation, and this account of creation is from the perspective of the feminine part of the Most High. That part of the Most High was with the Most High from the beginning, before it's, as it says, Yahuwah created me as his first course. So before anything else happened, even before he said, let there be light, if you will, he had already created that which was in him, the feminine part of him, and that is what wisdom is. So Yahuwah created me as his first course, before his works of old. From everlasting, I was established from the beginning, before the earth began, when there were no watery depths. And that's why I'm saying that this happened before he said, let there be light. Because if you remember, the Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. And then it says, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. The deep was the waters. Okay. So before there were waters, wisdom had already been there. Okay. So that's how old wisdom is. That's how ancient wisdom is. Wisdom is an everlasting thing. All right. And so we can count on wisdom. I think that's one of the reasons why Proverbs 8 is bringing this out. So my son, as the teacher says to the student, my son, look at all of the aspects of wisdom and embrace them, because that's where your life is. That's where life has always been. It's always been through wisdom. So I'm not going to go into very much more other than verse 32 says, now therefore, my sons, listen to me, for blessed are those who keep my ways. Listen to instruction and be wise. Be that wise woman, not the foolish woman. Don't ignore instruction. Blessed is the person who listens to me, watching daily at my doors, rather than casting a side eye to the harlot's door. Fix your gaze on the door of wisdom, because that's where life is. So just quickly, as we wrap up, let's just look at I'm just going to go right to where we were. We talked about Proverbs 5 and 6 already. So the harlot versus the woman of wisdom. Proverbs 7, the wiles of the harlot. In other words, here's what the harlot does. She is visited in the dark. She dresses the part. She's loud and stubborn. She's found in the streets. She seems religious, but as she seems religious, she's inviting you to her bed, which does not belong to you. It belongs to her husband, but her husband is absent, and that's when she does her dirt. Um, it says, "Those who incline their way to her ways will die," and her house is actually the way to hell. So that's one woman. The other woman that's compared is in Proverbs 8 that we just read. Wisdom stands in high places and at the gates of the city, because that's where people enter in to the blessing of the Most High. She calls to the simple. Actually, I should have put that on the other one too, because the harlot calls to the simple too, but for different reasons. By her mouth comes truth and righteousness, rather than being loud and stubborn. Her words are plain, they're right, they're righteous. Wisdom is better than material, talking about gold, silver, or rubies. Wisdom lives with prudence, because prudence and wisdom go hand in hand. And kings are able to reign by wisdom. And as it says, I didn't mean to do that. Well, I'm not going to try to pull it back up, because that might cause a problem. But the end result is, all who find wisdom find favor. So that's what we wanted to cover. So we looked at those two opposing mindsets. The mindset of the disobedient, which is personified by the harlot, the mindset of obedience, which is personified with wisdom, and both of them are existing, and the king or the king's son or children has to choose which one to embrace. So the encouragement to the son is embrace wisdom, and that's our encouragement to ourselves and one another as well. The Father bless you and keep you. The Father make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Father lift up his countenance